3 days before I left, my son handed me a folder. Not asked, handed. The way you hand someone a bill at a restaurant. "Dad, just look it over," he said. "It's not a big deal." I opened it at the kitchen table while my daughter-in-law stood near the sink pretending to wipe the counter. The folder contained loan documents. A second mortgage application, with my name on it. My house is collateral. The number at the bottom was $340,000. I closed the folder. I set it down. I said, "Let me think about it." That was the last thing I said to either of them for 11 days. My name is Gerald Pitman. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the county of Buncombe, North Carolina, and I retired with a pension, a paid-off house in Asheville, and 2 bad knees that remind me every morning that I am not young anymore. My wife Patricia passed 7 years ago. Ovarian cancer. 14 months from diagnosis to the end. After that, I learned how to cook for one and how to sleep on my side of a bed without drifting. My son, Marcus, is 38. He sells commercial real estate in Charlotte. He married Sandra 12 years ago. They have 2 children, a girl named Addison, who just turned 9, and a boy named Cooper, who is 6. Those 2 kids are the reason I still drive 4 hours round trip to Charlotte on holidays without complaining. Marcus has always been the kind of man who believes that a good idea is the same thing as a done deal. He pitched me a food truck business when he was 32, a rental property in Myrtle Beach when he was 34, a cryptocurrency platform. And I am not joking, he actually printed out a PowerPoint when he was 36. I listened to every pitch. I smiled. I said things like, "That's interesting," and "Let me look into it." I never gave him money for any of them. Not because I didn't have it, because I had watched each idea evaporate within 6 months, and Marcus had never once mentioned them again after they did. What I did do was pay for both grandchildren's college funds, fully funded and in their names. I did that quietly, to a financial advisor in Asheville, when Addison was born and again when Cooper arrived. I never told Marcus. I told Patricia, and she squeezed my hand and said, "Good. Don't tell him." She knew her son. The folder on my kitchen table was different from the other pitches. This one had my signature line already printed. This one had a deadline, a balloon payment Marcus owed to a private lender, due in 45 days. The lender's name was a holding company out of Atlanta. The amount owed was $340,000. I found this out not from Marcus, but from his younger sister. My daughter Joy called me 2 days after the folder appeared. She lives in Raleigh with her husband and works as a pediatric nurse. She has her mother's voice, direct, no wasted words. "Dad," she said, "did Marcus ask you to sign something? He left some papers. He borrowed money from a private lender 18 months ago to buy into a commercial development in Fort Mill. The deal fell apart in February. He's been rolling the loan with interest. Sandra doesn't know the full amount." I sat down in the chair by the window, the one that looks out over the backyard where Patricia used to grow tomatoes. "How do you know this?" I asked. "Because he called me first," she said. I told him no. I asked her if she was all right. She laughed the way her mother used to laugh when she was trying not to cry. "Dad," she said, "please don't sign anything." I told her I wouldn't. I thanked her. I hung up. Then I sat in that chair for a very long time. Marcus called the next morning at 7:40. I know the exact time because I was still in my robe, standing at the coffee maker, watching the machine drip. "Did you look at the folder?" I looked at it. "And?" I said I'd think about it. There was a pause. "Dad, the deadline is real. These people don't negotiate." "I understand. I need an answer by Friday." "Marcus," I said I would think about it. He sighed. The kind of sigh that is meant to make you feel like the unreasonable one. "Look, you have the equity. The house is worth at least $480. This is just paperwork." "It's not just paperwork. It's a lien on my home. You're not using the equity for anything." I want to be very clear about what happened inside me when he said that. It wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was something colder, something that felt like a door closing. "I'll call you Friday," I said, and I hung up. Thursday, Sandra called. "I have to be fair here. Sandra is not a bad person. She is ambitious in the way that sometimes makes people careless, and she's always treated my house like a comfortable place to visit, rather than a place that matters to someone. But she is not cruel. She loves her children. I believe that. Gerald," she said, and her voice was careful, I know this is a lot to ask. It is. We're not asking for a gift. The property will recover. Marcus has people interested in buying in. We just need to get to this window. Sandra, that property already failed once. Gerald. Her voice shifted, still careful but tighter now. We have kids. You know that. We need stability for them. You're in a position to help. Patricia would have. I stopped her. Don't. I said. Don't use her name for this. Silence. I'll call Marcus Friday, I said, and I ended the call. I went out to the backyard after that. I don't know why. I just stood on the porch in the November cold and looked at the brown patch where the tomato garden used to be. Patricia always said she'd expand it. She ran out of summers. Sandra had made a mistake that she didn't know she'd made. Not the ask itself. The ask I could forgive. It was the name. The moment she put Patricia's name on that loan document in my mind, something shifted in me that would not shift back. I called my financial advisor Friday morning. Her name is Margaret Cho, and she's been handling my accounts for 9 years. I trust her more than I trust most people I've known for decades. I told her what was happening. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Gerald, do not sign that document. A private lender with a 45-day balloon on a failed commercial deal is not someone you want a mortgage-backed obligation to. I know. If he defaults, they come after the collateral, your house. I know. What do you need from me? I told her I wanted to review the grandchildren's trust accounts. I wanted to make sure the beneficiary structures were airtight. I wanted to add a provision that neither parent could access or redirect the funds under any circumstance until Addison and Cooper each turned 22. Margaret was quiet again. Then she said, I can have that drafted by end of day Tuesday. Good, I said. And Margaret, don't send anything to my home address. I drove to Asheville Hardware after the call and bought a medium-sized moving box, a roll of packing tape, and a card. I addressed the card to both kids. I wrote things in it that I don't think I need to share here. Private things. The kind of things you write when you want someone to know, years later, that they were thought of. I put a photograph in the envelope. It was from the previous July, when I'd taken Addison and Cooper fishing at Lake Julian. Cooper had fallen asleep in the boat, and Addison was holding up a bay she'd caught, squinting into the sun. And she looked so much like her grandmother that I'd had to look away from the viewfinder for a second. I sealed the envelope. I put it in the box. I packed some things into a separate bag. Then I called my friend Raymond. Raymond Oakes and I worked together at the county for 22 years. He retired to Brevard, about 40 minutes west of Asheville, and has been trying to get me to go fishing with him for 2 years. He picked up on the second ring. Ray, I said, I need a place to stay for a while. Gerald Pitman, he said. It's about time. You want to come now or Friday? Saturday morning, I said. I'll make up the guest room. Friday came. Marcus called at 9 a.m. Dad, I need an answer. Marcus, I said, and I tried to keep my voice even. I'm not going to sign the documents. The silence lasted about 3 seconds. Then you're serious. I am. Dad, we are talking about your grandchildren's stability. We are talking about Marcus. I kept my voice very steady. Do not do what your wife did. Do not use those children as a reason for me to cover a debt you made without telling anyone. His voice changed, went harder. You have $400,000 in equity sitting in a house you live in alone. You have a pension. You have Patricia's life insurance that you haven't touched. And you're telling me you can't help your own son. I let him finish. I can help you, I said. I won't secure a private lender's loan with my home. Those are different things. If you want to talk about what help looks like, call me next week. There is no next week. The deadline is in 45 days. Then you need to find another solution. Dad, I love you, Marcus. I'll talk to you soon. I hung up. My hands were not shaking. I noticed that. I thought they might be, and they weren't. I left Saturday morning before 7. I left my cell phone on the kitchen counter with the SIM card removed. I left a box on the front porch with a note taped to it. Inside the box, a key to the house, a letter explaining that I was well and not to call the police, and the sealed envelope for Addison and Cooper. The letter instructed Marcus to give the envelope to the kids to open when they were older. I also left the name and number of my neighbor, Phil Garrett, who has a spare key and checks on the house when I travel. I did not tell Marcus or Sandra where I was going. I drove west on I-26 with the windows down even though it was cold, because the cold air kept me from thinking too hard about what I was leaving and made me focus on where I was going instead. Raymond was standing on his porch when I pulled up the gravel drive. He had 2 cups of coffee ready. He didn't ask any questions. That is what 30 years of friendship looks like. By Monday, Marcus had called the house phone 14 times. I know because Phil texted me to say Marcus had also called Phil and had driven up from Charlotte Sunday night and knocked on my door for 20 minutes. Joy called my cell, the new number I'd gotten Saturday afternoon. I answered. He came to my house, she said. He wanted to know if I knew where you were. What did you tell him? That you were a grown man who was allowed to go wherever he wanted. Thank you, Dad. Her voice got quiet. Are you okay? I looked out the window of Raymond's guest room at the mountains going gray in the afternoon light. There's a particular color they turn in November, a kind of deep blue-green, and Patricia and I used to drive up the Blue Ridge Parkway every fall just to see it. I think I am, I said. I think I will be. I stayed in Brevard for 3 weeks. During that time, I got a letter from Margaret confirming the trust amendments were complete and filed. I went fishing twice. I cooked dinner for Raymond and his wife, Clarice, 3 times because I felt guilty eating their food every night. I slept 8 hours, which I haven't done consistently since Patricia got sick. Marcus reached me through Joy eventually. She passed along a message he wanted to talk, not about the money, just to talk. I waited another 4 days before I called. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. Marcus was, and I am choosing this word carefully, quieter than I had ever heard him. The lender had agreed to a reduced settlement when Marcus demonstrated he couldn't access outside collateral. He'd sold his lease on the Charlotte office space and negotiated a payment plan. It would hurt them for a few years, but it was manageable. He didn't apologize for the ask. Not directly. He said, I didn't think it would blow up like this, which is not an apology, but it's an acknowledgement. For Marcus, at this stage of things, I decided it was enough to work with. What he did say near the end of the call was, Addison keeps asking about the fishing picture. I asked him what he meant. In the box. The envelope. She found it on the porch and brought it inside. I told her she had to wait to open it. That's right. She keeps asking when. When she's older, I said. How much older, I said. How much older, old enough to understand what it says. He was quiet for a moment. What does it say? That I love her, I said. That I love her, I said. That I love Cooper, and that being someone's grandfather is the best thing I've ever done. Marcus didn't say anything for a while. I could hear him breathing. I want to bring them up, he said finally. Before Christmas. If you want. I looked out at the tomato patch again. Brown and empty. I'd been thinking lately that spring wasn't too far off. That maybe I'd expand it a little this year. Try some of the heirloom varieties Patricia always talked about, but never got around to planting. Yes, I said. Come up. They came the second weekend of December. Sandra stayed in the car for a long time after Marcus parked. I watched from the window. Eventually she got out, and when I opened the front door, she looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her face before. Not shame, exactly. Something more tired than that. Something that looked a little like relief. Gerald, she said, I'm sorry for what I said about Patricia. I know, I said. Come in. It's cold. Cooper ran past both of us into the living room and immediately found the remote control. Addison stopped in the doorway and looked up at me with her grandmother's eyes. Grandpa, she said, when do I get to open the letter? When you're 22, I told her. She made the face that 9-year-olds make when an adult says something deeply unreasonable. That's forever. It'll go fast, I said. I promise. She didn't believe me. That's fine. She will eventually. There are things I want to say here, now that the story is done. I am not a man who wanted to punish his son. I want to be clear about that. When I drove west that Saturday morning, I was not thinking about what Marcus would feel when he found the box. I was thinking about the fact that for the first time in a long time, I was making a decision that no one had pressured me into. That is a feeling I had forgotten. It turned out I needed to remember it. The grandchildren's trust accounts are still in place. Marcus knows about them now. I told him when he came in December. He sat at the kitchen table, the the same table where he'd handed me the folder, and he looked at the numbers I printed out, and he was quiet for a long time. "You did this when they were born," he said. "When Addison was born, and again when Cooper arrived." He looked up. "You never told me." "No. Why?" I thought about how to answer that honestly without being cruel. "Because," I said, "I wanted it to be theirs, not anyone else's." He understood. I could see it on his face. It took him a minute, but he got there. I expanded the tomato garden in March. 6 varieties, including 2 heirlooms Patricia had bookmarked in a gardening catalog she never got to order from. I found the catalog in a box in the closet, the pages still folded. Addison helped me plant on a Saturday in April. She is serious about things when she decides to be. She measured the spacing with a ruler and got annoyed when I eyeballed it. She is in that way very much her grandmother's granddaughter. Cooper mostly threw dirt. That evening, after they'd gone home and I was cleaning up, I found a small handprint in the garden soil near the edge. Cooper's, I think, from when he'd been digging, and I wasn't watching closely enough. I left it there. I don't know exactly what Patricia would have said about all of it. She was not a sentimental person in the way people mean when they say sentimental. She was practical. She kept receipts. She made lists. But she would have looked at that handprint in the dirt and she would have said something like, "There. That's what it's for." I think she would have been right. I've thought a lot about the word entitled. People use it so easily now. But I'm not sure entitlement is really about greed. I think it's about a failure of imagination. The inability to picture what another person's life actually cost them. Marcus didn't see a home when he looked at my house. He saw equity. He didn't see 31 years of early mornings and budget meetings and bad coffee in county offices. He saw a number on a property appraisal. And Sandra didn't see a widow's name when she said Patricia's. She saw a lever, something to move me with. I don't think either of them understood what they were doing. That's the part I've had to sit with. The damage people do when they're not paying attention is just as real as the damage people do on purpose. What I know now, having come out the other side of it, is that the moment I said, "Let me think about it," and meant it, really meant it, not as a delay, but as a decision, something changed in me that needed to change. I had spent years being the kind of father who smoothed things over, who showed up, who transferred money into college funds quietly and asked nothing in return. There is nothing wrong with any of that, but somewhere along the way, I had confused generosity with availability. I had made myself so consistently present that Marcus had stopped being able to imagine my absence, and a person who cannot imagine your absence cannot fully understand your presence. That is not a criticism of my son. It is an observation about what I allowed. The 3 weeks in Brevard were not a punishment. I want to say that again because I think it matters. I was not hiding. I was not making a point. I was, for the first time in a very long time, living at my own pace in a place I chose, without my phone ringing and without anyone needing something from me before 9 in the morning. Raymond and I fished 2 mornings and argued about baseball, and I cooked a pot of chili on a Tuesday just because I felt like it. Simple things. The kind of simple that you forget exists when grief and obligation take up all the available space. I think about Addison with her ruler, measuring the distance between tomato plants with a seriousness that makes you want to laugh and not laugh at the same time. I think about Cooper's handprint in the dirt. Those are the things that were always worth protecting, not by fighting over them, not by giving in to keep the peace, but by making sure that no matter what happened between the adults, those children would have something solid waiting for them. The trust accounts are not about money. They're about a decision I made before any of this went wrong. A decision that said, whatever else happens, these 2 kids are going to be okay. That is what I want to have meant. That is the thing I most hope they understand when Addison finally opens that letter at 22. You do not have to be loud to hold your ground. You do not have to explain yourself to everyone who demands an explanation. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is go quiet, go still, and let the people who love you figure out what your absence actually means. Most of them will figure it out, and the ones who don't, well, that tells you something too. I am 63 years old. My knees hurt. My tomatoes are doing well, my grandchildren are coming next month, and I've already cleared space in the garage for the fishing poles. I think that's enough. I really do.